Hello, and welcome to Dare to Talk, where we strive to bring some positivity to your day. I'm Dare. Let's talk. Before we get into the meat of this episode, I am going to invite you to join me in some mindful breathing practice. I invite you to get into a comfortable position, whatever feels the most comfortable to you, whether it's sitting, standing, laying down. I invite you to just make yourself as comfortable as you can possibly get right now in this moment. I'm also going to invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so, or if you are in a place where it is safe for you to do so. Closing your eyes is going to help you cut out some unnecessary stimuli going around you and allow you to tune in a little bit more fully on your breathing. When we are doing this breathing exercise, I would like you to focus on drawing breath down, not just into your chest and your lungs, but deep into your belly, just filling up that belly cavity, drawing in that air so that you are full like a balloon, just ready to pop, and then letting it out slowly. We are going to take 3 deep breaths in through our nose and out through our mouth. Are you ready? Let's begin. Breathing in and out. 1. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. 3. All right, you can open your eyes now. I don't know about you, but I feel much more grounded and ready to take on this day, which is a good thing because I'm feeling a little bit tired today. For those of you who are joining us and missed out on the first episode, I am Dare. I am going to do a really quick disclaimer today. Uh, if you want to go into the first episode and get more information on what I'm about to say, awesome. Feel free to do so. It is a wonderful episode where I express a little bit of my journey up until this point. But for those of you who just need like basic, real quick information, I have Bell's concentric sclerosis, which is a rare form of multiple sclerosis. Today, I am having a little bit of a flare up while I am trying to record. So, for those of you who can see me, I might start having some small seizure activity. It's okay. Uh, it's a pseudo seizure. I maintain awareness. My head might just go back and forth a little bit. That's fine. Um, for those of you who can only hear me, I might stutter over words a little bit more than usual today. And as much as I would love to edit them out, sometimes I think that it's important that people get very authentic experiences. And so I am probably going to lead in mistakes that I make because of my multiple sclerosis so that you guys can kind of see here, understand that I'm not just making this up. This is something that really happens. But hopefully, I don't have any major symptoms while I'm trying to record today because I really want to get this recording done. I really want to put it out to you guys. I feel like these topics are important, and this is something that I feel like a lot of people are going to benefit from. So, just my real quick disclaimer. And now let's get into our episode. So, in this episode of Dare to Talk, I feel like it is important to talk about why we should care about mental health and what mental health is really all about. Mental health is one of those topics that I feel like a lot of people get kind of uncomfortable when it gets brought up. And I feel like a lot of people kind of associate mental health exclusively with mental illness. And they are not really the same thing. Mental health is this kind of broader category overall, and mental illness is just kind of one part of mental health. While that is the case, however, for this podcast, I do feel it is important to kind of touch a little bit on some mental illness statistics because, well, for one, I'm coming at this podcast as somebody who has struggled with mental illness for a majority of my life. And for two, mental illness is a part of mental health, but a small part. So I am going to throw some really quick mental illness facts at you guys, and then we'll talk about why it matters and why we should be talking about mental health and why we should care in the first place. So, in the United States, according to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, about 1 in 5 adults suffer from mental illness, and about 1 in 20 suffer from serious mental illness. There is a large list of percentages by specific mental illness. I'm only going to list a few of them here, but about 15.5% suffer from major depressive disorder. About 19.1% suffer from general anxiety disorder, and about 1.4 suffer from borderline personality disorder, which is one that's very near and dear to my heart because I am one of those 1.4. So mental illness has historically been very discriminated against, very misunderstood, and very negatively stigmatized. Even in recent modern kind of days, there's been large pushes to get more empathy and awareness of mental illness out, but it is still not completely accepted and completely discussed and talked about. And so there still is kind of a wider perception of negative stigma related to mental illness. So in the United Kingdom, there is a political movement and a kind of bigger, not so political movement, but more social movement called Rethink Mental Illness. And it's a campaigning push to try to get more awareness for mental illness and more sympathy and empathy for people with mental illness, making mental illness care more accessible to people. So they ran some studies, and according to their statistics, about 93% of people still feel that there isn't enough awareness of mental illness, nor is there enough empathy for people suffering from mental illness. So, like I said, the world is kind of getting better at being willing to talk about mental illness. We're normalizing talking about mental illness a little bit more, but we can do more. We can do better. And mental health is kind of this encompassing overall umbrella that mental illness kind of falls under, as I stated earlier. And so when we're talking about mental health, we do need to mention kind of mental illness a little bit. For people who have mental illness, like myself, like other people who are probably going to listen to this podcast, hopefully, for people I knew, people I grew up with, mental illness can affect a lot of aspects of our lives, including our own mental health. And understanding that mental health is important can really help people who have mental illness in big, large ways. But mental health isn't only for people who have mental illness. Mental health is for everybody and can help everybody. It can bring about good things in people's lives, regardless of what your situation is. And it can even be helpful for people who are having chronic illnesses that can make life just a little bit more difficult. So, like people who have multiple sclerosis, like I do, or other myelinating diseases, or other disabilities like fibromyalgia, autism, chronic fatigue, things that other people kind of have to deal with that just takes a really big toll on your physical, emotional, social well being. So, when we're talking about mental health, it's going to be important that we define kind of what we mean talking about mental health. Because, like I said, a lot of people exclusively say that, mental health is related to mental illness. And so when we're talking about mental health, we're only going to be talking about mental illnesses. And that is not the case. Mental health is this encompassing umbrella that covers our emotional, psychological, and social well being, and it has a large influence on how we think, feel, act, as well as a large influence on determining how we handle stress and relate to others and make decisions or choices in our lives. So it all comes down to the way that we are thinking, the way that we think, the way that we think about the world, that we think about our situations, just our thought process in general. I have, over the last 5 years or so, even before my diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, while I was going through psychology studies, gotten really enamored with this organ of our bodies called our brains. Our brains are really cool in that they are kind of the housing center of everything that we are. So I like to think about our bodies as this kind of big meat machine, and the motherboard that runs it all, the thing that makes it work, is our brain. Our brain sends signals through our neural pathways and through our nervous system out to our body, telling our body to move, telling our organs to function, telling our heart to beat, telling our lungs to draw in air, telling our body what hormones it needs and where it needs them, or for our pancreas to release insulin, and for all of this other stuff. And then our nervous system takes signals that our body is getting and sends it back to our brains. And our brain takes these signals and interprets them into our senses, our feeling of touch, taste, smell, light, all of these things. And it then tells our body, in response to the stimulus that it received messages for, how to then respond. And it does it all just very kind of quickly without even a lot of thought process to it. But on top of running our bodies, this meat machine that it's housed in, our brains are the housing center of our personalities, our memories, our feelings, our emotions. Everything kind of comes in from our brains. And one of the really cool things about our brains is that it can be taught, it can learn and be trained to do different things. Our brain has this really wonderful thing called plasticity. So if our brain gets damaged in certain ways, depending on the level of damage and where the damage is done, it can rewire itself to create new neural pathways so that we can regain certain functions or be able to remember certain things and still be able to function, which is really, really nice. So that's just one of the many ways that our brain actually learns, but can also be taught when it comes to its responses to things, to negative stimuli. Our brains are these amazing, amazing organs, and they do a lot of awesome things to us, and they keep us alive. And they've been really good at keeping us alive. I mean, we have our fight, flight, or freeze responses that originate in our brains when we're threatened. And I will talk more about fight, flight, or freeze in another episode. We also really learn from positive and negative experiences, but our brains are kind of flawed in their response to negative experiences. And so let me give you guys an example of what I mean by our brains being flawed in response to negative experiences. Imagine, if you will, that you are having the best day ever. This wonderful, amazing, awesome day. And you are having the time of your life. You woke up feeling refreshed for the first time in a long time. You are getting things that you need to get done. You had your favorite food and it was perfect. You got to talk to people that you cared about. You got praised for all of the good work that you were doing and recognized for all of the effort that you were putting in. It has just been an amazing, fantastic, wonderful day. And you feel like your day just couldn't get any better. And you're going to go home. You're so excited. You've just had the best day of your life. Now, imagine, if you will, that you're on your way home from this best day ever, cloud nine. And in your excitement to get home and tell your loved ones about how awesome your day was, you get a little heavy footed on the gas and you get pulled over by a cop and you get a speeding ticket. How's your day going now? Is it still the best day ever? Or has it just turned completely and totally rotten? And if that wasn't enough, you got released by the cop, got your ticket, we're driving home, and now you've driven over a nail and your tire popped and it is flat. Still having the best day ever? I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be. And then you realize that, oh my gosh, my tire's flat. I'm on the side of the road. I have a ticket from a cop and I don't have a spare tire, which means I'm stranded and now I have to call somebody to come and get me. I'd be pretty ticked off at that point. Most typical people probably would be pretty ticked off at that point. And then they get home and they tell people about the horrible, awful, no good day that they had, that it was terrible, 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 and forget about how just an hour or so before, depending on how long it takes for you to get towed and to ride home, your day was great, perfect, wonderful, amazing. And you were going to come home and celebrate all of that. Our brains have this tendency to want to cling onto the negative experiences. And we learn very quickly from negative experiences. And so when negative things happen, that is stress. And that's what our brains looks at. It's what it focuses on. It's what kicks us into our staying alive mechanisms, our fight, flight, or freezes. It overwhelms our bodies with hormones and other things trying to deal with the stress that we are having right now in that moment. And that overrides everything else. This is why mental health practices are actually very important. Stress is a fact of life. We're going to have to deal with stress. But our responses to stress can really be determined by our mental health practices and how often we are practicing our mental health practices. So I'm going to take a break here from talking about mental health, and I'm going to do some mental health practice of my own. And that is an engagement in terrible dare jokes. What did the doctor say to the man who had an elephant on his brain? It looks like you've got a lot on your mind. Eh? Okay, then. I love my terrible dare jokes, but you don't have to. All of my students would be cringing and rolling their eyes right now. But thank you for joining me in this episode's terrible dare joke. Join me in the next episode to hear more dare jokes that just make you want to cringe. So, we were just talking about stress and how stress relates to our mental health. Stress is not something that we're ever going to be able to get away from. It happens in our lives, whether we want it to or not. And we can have little stressors that just kind of build up over time or that just come in really quickly and then go away. Things like having to do homework or having a person look at us kind of funny, but then walk away and we just don't think about it very much. Or, like the kid that spills water on our rug. It's annoying in the moment, but it's water. It's not going to hurt anything. It'll dry after time. It's a stress, but it's not the end of the world. And then we have big stressors like illness, chronic illness, mental health issues, mental illness, things like multiple sclerosis or like other disabilities like autism that can cause a lot of stress on a lot of different people. We have deaths in the family. We have major things, parents fighting, siblings fighting, fears that our loved ones are getting into trouble and we don't know how to stop it. We have stresses, and these stresses are going to be there no matter what. But like stated earlier, our brains can be retrained in the way that we think about stress, in the way that we respond to stress, in the way that we can handle our lives. Because stress is a killer, especially if it's left unmanaged. Stress can lead to a lot of very negative things, both physical and mental for us. So, the Mayo Clinic, the Mayo Foundation for Medical Research and Education, has done studies. In fact, actually, lots of people have done studies on the physical effects that unmanaged stress has on people. And the general consensus, particularly found by the Mayo Foundation for Medical Research and Education, is that stress contributes to many different physical things, such as weight gain, diabetes, chronic illness, chronic fatigue, digestive issues, poor sleep. And it can also contribute to things like poor interpersonal relationships, poor decision making, moodiness, and poor work or educational performance. Left unmanaged, stress can create more issues on top of whatever things are happening that are stressing us out. For my people who have mental illness, such as those of us with borderline personality disorder, stress affects us a little bit more because we already have stressors on our symptoms, and our reactions can be very disproportionate to what is actually happening around us. So those little stressors become big stressors. Those big stressors become insurmountable, and we just completely and totally shut down. Our fight or flight responses kick in really, really heavily, and it just doesn't necessarily go well. For people who have chronic illness, stressors can really help make our chronic illness symptoms worse. So I know that right now I'm having a lot of kind of stress generalized in my life right now. And even though I'm getting plenty of sleep, I'm still waking up very fatigued and tired. My eyeballs don't want to deal with glasses today because I'm a little bit stressed out. And so my symptoms are kind of flaring. Things are made worse when we have unmanaged stress. And this is why talking about mental health is going to be really important, and why mental health discussions and stress management discussions are really, really important for us. Mental health and having good mental health practices is what is going to be the difference between our world being on fire around us and us burning in the flames versus our world being on fire around us and us learning how to dance in it. When we are having good mental health practices, we have engaged in practices that grow positivity and gratitude and that allow us to recognize when we are experiencing stress and fight, flight, or freeze responses, and give us coping skills so that we can take a second to step away from our stress and kind of manage how we're feeling. And then they give us stress management skills so that we can go in and problem solve what's happening or recognize if it's something that we can fix. And we are already practicing mental health kind of skills on a day-to-day basis so that when stress does happen, we are not completely and totally overwhelmed and it's not building up over time to become completely and totally debilitating. Mental health practices are things like taking care of our bodies by eating well and exercising. Things like taking time to meditate, take mindful moments. So, our mindful breathing that we're doing when we're starting these episodes are a little bit of mental health practices. They are things like trying to make sure that we're getting enough sleep, recognizing how sleep is affecting our bodies, and if we are going to be as functional as we need to be if we are not getting enough sleep. It's things like building up support structures around us. So I know that a lot of things in my life I wouldn't be able to do without proper support structures, and knowing how to build those support structures so that we're not out here on our own fighting through ourselves. Mental health practices are also things like recognizing that it's okay to reach out to our support structures and ask for help. It is also engaging in hobbies that make us feel good and engaging in hobbies that are good and beneficial for us. And it's recognizing too the difference between coping mechanisms and good mental health practices and stress management strategies, knowing that there is a difference between the two and recognizing when our mental health practices and when our coping strategies are healthy versus when they might not be very healthy and serving a good purpose. It takes time and practice to get our mental health strategies to be very solid. And Mhm. It's one of those things that we really want to make sure that we are engaging in daily, not just every once in a while, but really trying to make good mental health practices a part of our everyday being so that when we do get the large stressors and when we do have to face off against a bunch of little stressors that just seem to hit back to back to back, we're prepared. It's not something that we're trying to practice in the moment of negativity. It's something that we practice all the time. So it then becomes our natural, instinctual way of thinking. It's part of that rewiring the brain. Our brains are naturally kind of wired to focus on negative stuff and to really hone in on the negative because that's what's threatening our well being. And when we are focusing on that negative, we're forgetting about the positives. But if we're practicing good mental health practices a lot, practicing positivity, practicing gratitude, practicing taking our mindful moments, then when the bad things happen, it's not going to completely overwhelm the positive that happened in our day. Like the day that we talked about earlier, where it was the perfect day ever. The cop pulling us over, the tire getting popped, the not having a spare tire. Those are all really big stressors. But if we've practiced really good mental health practices a lot, we can take the stress, problem solve, make good decisions in the moment, and still recognize that, yeah, that afternoon was terrible, but we had a great day that morning and we can appreciate it for what it is. And that's really kind of the hope of what I want to get to. So, in the next episode, we are going to talk about fight, flight, or freeze and why it is important to us, why we need to recognize that it happens when we go into stress and different ways that we can help manage it. And that is going to be in part engaging with our breathing. So, join me in the next episode for Dare to Talk discussions on fight, flight, or freeze and why we have it. And please like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, sign up and subscribe if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. And I hope to see you in the next episode of Dare to Talk. I'm Dare, and I dare you to talk about how you're really feeling today.